Hi, Lee Phillips again. I want to talk to you about, I'm going to say offshore trusts for a minute. And my answer to the offshore world is basically no. In fact, it's usually hell no. But let me explain. The offshore industry is something that gained real popularity in the 70s and the early 80s. And I started to study it really heavy in the 90s. And I went to the Isle of Man and to Guernsey and Jersey and to the Bahamas and Barbados and the Cook Islands and all the rest of them. It was a good excuse to go, right? But I studied it very heavily. And at that point, it was pretty clear that there was no tax advantage. You couldn't move the property, the assets outside of the United States and get a tax advantage. You had to report them on your tax return. There's a box right up at the top of your 1040. Do you have anything offshore? And if you check the box, it's pretty much an automatic audit on that 1040. So maybe that's not such a good idea in that case, but hey, we can do it, and it's tax neutral. And everybody will say today it's tax neutral. And particularly since the Patriot Act after 9/11, you're really not hiding any funds anywhere from the IRS. So the question is, can we do it for asset protection? And the answer is kind of maybe, sort of not. The problem was we could get the assets offshore easy, but how did we get them back onshore? And in the 90s, they said, well, what we'll do is we'll issue a credit card on your bank account in the Bahamas or in Guernsey, and we will then allow you to just charge things on that credit card. The statement will come to the bank in the Bahamas, and they will automatically pay it. And that way you can use that money stealthily and maybe even not pay tax on it. And it didn't work. So they tried all sorts of things to repatriate the funds and to get them back to you and to keep them out there and all sorts of things. And in the late 80s, a big law firm in Denver, England, Rudman, decided to go to the Cook Islands. And they wrote the laws for the Cook Islands. You'd pretty much know that as Tahiti. And they made it so that there was no reciprocity between the Cook Islands and the United States. You'd get a judgment against you in the U.S., and the Cook Island trustee, the laws in the Cook Islands said, hey, we don't recognize a judgment in the United States. And so you'd get into court, you get a judgment against you, and the court would say, hey, you got all this money offshore. That big building over there is really owned by a trust in the Cook Islands. Reject that, give us the big building, and we're going to sell it to pay off your creditors. And you'd say, well, no, Your Honor, I'd love to do that. But the Cook Islands, they don't recognize a judgment in the United States. And the judge would say, well, yeah, I understand that, but you bring the money back, and you tell the trustee in the Cook Islands that we're bringing the money back, and then we'll pay off your creditors. No, Judge, you don't understand. The Cook Islands, they don't recognize the judgment in the United States. There's no reciprocity. I can't repatriate those funds. And the judge would say, well, yeah, but you've been spending that money. Tell them, bring it back, give it to your creditors. No, Your Honor, you don't understand. And they would go through this for a while. And then finally the judge would say, oh, screw it. Hey, bailiff, over here. And you can look up the cases, look up failure to repatriate trust funds or refusal to repatriate trust funds. And you can see that there are a number of cases, many cases, where the individual spent a lot of time in jail. Some of them spent 6-7 years in jail before they finally decided that maybe that money in the Cook Islands didn't look as good. And by the way, Bubba, he's not as good to me as he used to be in jail. Maybe I ought to have those funds repatriated and pay off my creditors. And in every case, funny thing is, finally the funds were repatriated. So, does the offshore asset protection work? Well, it's confusing. And it makes creditors think twice. And they don't like it. And it costs them more. And there are just big problems with it for creditors. But it's also costing you a lot of money. Nobody's doing this offshore stuff for you for free. Trust me, boys. And when push comes to shove, there isn't any asset protection. And the judge, if he eats something bad for lunch, he just simply says, hey, bailiff, over here, take that guy to jail. When he gets around to repatriating the funds, we will let him out of jail. And so that's kind of the situation with offshore. There were other issues with it, and they said, well, if I don't own it, which you wouldn't do in the offshore trust, and there's a protector that does things and can replace the trustees and all of these things. But if I don't own it, then the government said, well, if you control it, we can still get it. So there was a play in the late 90s where they said, okay, we won't own it and we won't control it. The Europeans have known for years, you don't own things, you control things. And so we went to, well, we're not going to own it and we're not going to control it, and that way it isn't ours offshore. And I just said it. It isn't ours offshore. It ain't yours. I worked with one of the biggest financial gurus ever in the United States in the mid-90s. And this guy wrote the definitive book at that time on financial stuff. He was the financial guru. Every one of you'd know his name if I said it. And he put a bunch of money offshore. I don't know what it was. I'm going to guess somewhere between $10 and $50 million. And his lawyer said, well, you can't own it. You can't control it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so you don't own it and you don't control it. Well, this guy died. And his wife went to the lawyer who had set all this up and said, hey, I need the money. Bring the money back. And the lawyer looked at her and he said, well, what money? She said, well, all the money that's offshore. And the lawyer said, well, do you have anything that shows that you own anything offshore? Do you control anything offshore? I don't know that you have anything offshore. And she never did get the money. I did note that the lawyer in his early 50s did retire a couple of years later. But if you don't own it and you don't control it, you're just out of luck, buddy. So offshore, the short story is no. In my opinion, don't do it. If you're making money offshore, that might be a different story, but that's another story. But as far as offshore, I've never met anybody yet who says, wow, am I ever glad I did the offshore stuff. I've met a lot of people that said, man, I lost a lot of money in this offshore stuff. I got to quit it. I did quit it. It's over with. So this is my opinion on offshore. Lee Phillips talking about it. Now, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel because we put out these YouTubes one or two a week maybe, and at least we try. So we'll notify you if you subscribe as to what else is coming out new. We don't sell much of anything here. We don't have advertisements even, you might note. We're just trying to give education to folks on legal things. So this is Lee Phillips. Yeah, I'm an attorney. Don't hold that against me. We will catch you later, but probably not offshore.